This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, thank you. We're just about a minute before 7 p.m. I'm going to go ahead and get the meeting started. This is the West Goshen Township Board of Supervisors, June 16th, 2020 teleconference meeting. We're going to go ahead and start with the Pledge of the Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of
the United States of America,
to the republic
which
stands one nation,
under God,
liberty and justice for all. So I'm going to make an announcement that we had an executive session earlier this evening related to personnel matters. I also am going to read the chair's announcement on how the teleconference meeting rules of conduct. We read this each meeting so that people can be aware of how we're trying to ensure that people can be heard if they want to make public comment. And I'm going to be asking the board to do the same thing, that if they want to speak, that they at least just get my attention so we can make sure that that happens, so that we don't have all four supervisors talking on the same time. So at the beginning of the meeting, we will take a roll call for members, staff, and professional service providers present. We also have a roll call of those members of the public present on the teleconference. Each person speaking shall announce their identity at the beginning of comments. Public comment will be permitted only when specifically requested of the public just before each vote is taken or at the end of the meeting before adjournment. Each item requiring a vote will proceed with a motion and a second, followed first by member comments and questions, only when prompted by the chair, and then second by public comments, questions, but only when prompted by the chair. The voting shall be done by roll call of each member for each vote. So the first item on our agenda, which we have been eagerly looking forward to, is the report from Barbicane Thornton on the 2019 township audit.
Okay, my name's Steve. It's a Flackus from Barbicane Thornton Company. I'm the partner that's overseeing your audit. Your 2019 audit is currently in progress and is expected to be finalized by the end of the month. So basically, I was asked to come to this meeting to kind of talk about the audit process and how that works. I'd be glad to come to a meeting later in summer to present the audit results once the audits are finished up. But for today, it's going to be more of like the audit approach. What I want to explain is the responsibilities. We're engaged each year to audit the statements of West Goshen Township. The financial statements that we audit are the responsibility of management. We cannot take responsibility for them. If we did, it'd be an independent issue. They are management statements. Management is also responsible for putting internal controls in place relevant to the fair presentation and preparation of financial statements. Our role as the auditors under our professional standards is to plan and conduct our audit to obtain reasonable assurance that they're fairly presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles as applicable to governmental entities. The standards that we follow are auditing standards generally accepted in the United States of America and government auditing standards. It's also known as the Yellow Book because it's in a yellow book. The second set of standards apply to your audit. It's not a requirement, but the township did engage us to follow those standards. Entirely different.
Stephen, you're breaking up. Is anyone else getting that he's breaking up, or is it just me?
Do we have everybody else on mute now, Casey, so that Steve can speak without interruption? Okay. Go ahead, Steve.
Do that first through inquiries of management, employees, the board of supervisors. We start with that. Based on those interviews, they may, tell us of an area where where we need to focus in a little more detail or dig a little deeper. And then they also help us, these interviews also help us obtain expectations of what they expect when we get to the statements when we audit them. We do document our understanding of the internal controls over financial reporting for the purpose of planning our audit approach. Areas with ineffective or no controls will be areas that we look at in greater detail versus areas where we feel controls are strong and can be relied upon. We do analytical review of activities and balances. We look at trend data. We look at your actual results versus the budget that was approved by management versus prior year data. If something jumps out as looking odd, it'd be an area that we dig into a little deeper. And finally, we do substantive testing of key activities. What I mean by this, we do third-party confirmations to verify your cash balances. We send
Yeah, we lost him.
He's freezing up.
Yep, he looks frozen. Nope, we lost him.
confirmation.
Is this actually happening?
Is that caller?
Yeah, I think we might need to postpone this, and perhaps he can draft a letter that we could then read in as a result, because it seems like he's not able to continue his sentences without it freezing.
Yeah, this is not working at all.
We got all these other people on here who seem to be able to hear us, but
I hear the dog.
Yeah, I'm not sure whose dog was barking, that's for sure. Okay, I'll get in touch with Steve. Could we just take like a 2-second pause here?
can you unmute him so that maybe he can hear one of us tell him that we're going to go ahead and move forward?
2 or more employees in order to do something like that.
Steve?
Hey, Steve?
Yeah.
Your connection is not optimal. It's very jumpy, and we can only hear every third word or so. Uh-oh, I think he's frozen again.
Yeah. Can you just shoot him an email or a text message?
Yeah, I sure will. Steve, if you can hear me.
We're looking forward to it.
Yeah, we're gonna postpone your presentation. Yeah, he's just about disconnected. I can't even get through to him.
Yeah, okay.
Dangers of technology. Yeah, he is.
So Casey, perhaps, given the fact that we are planning on having a presentation as the supervisors are in the room, although we're still doing virtual, could we maybe invite him to stand at the podium in our July
Yes.
meeting? Okay.
Absolutely.
Great.
Okay, I can't get through to him, so I hate to do this. Oh yeah, he's gone. I'm gonna dismiss him from the meeting, and I'll get in touch with him.
All right, great.
And it's all yours.
Okay, thank you. Let me just quickly get to my agenda here. All right, so the next discussion is the reports for the month of May 2020, and that will be presented by Lieutenant Justin DeMedio.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So for the month of May of 2020, the West Goshen Police Department responded to 1,682 calls for service, 55 alarms. Those alarms, 10 of them were valid. We did have a few repeat offenders, if you will. The SPCA apparently has some new staff up there, so we were up there a few times answering some false alarms. We had 17 motor vehicle crashes, and we patrolled 17,485 miles during the month of May. Throughout the month, we continued with our selective enforcement throughout the townships. Some of those areas included Ashbrook Drive, Pennsylvania Avenue, Snyder Avenue, Warren Road, Falcon Lane, Montgomery Avenue, Ellis Lane, Goshen Road, and South Baltimore Street, excuse me. We continue to navigate through these restrictions with training, so we're still doing a lot of training remotely. Training has been limited now as a result, but some of the career development that we have been continuing on is the emergency response team is still meeting and training. We've had 3 officers go through that this month, and we're continuing our annual firearms recertification and training. We've had 8 officers go through during the month of May. We still continue with our Lexapol daily training bulletins. That's our policy bulletins that each officer is required to continue and complete each month. And we've recently signed on. It's a company that's through Lexapol, but it's called Police One, and we've recently signed on with them. They every officer now has credentials and log in, and we assign them a webinar to complete for each month. So we just started that this month. We're going to see how it goes, and reevaluate it towards the end of the year to see if it's worth the cost to do that. One announcement. So this morning, after 40 years of dedicated service to the residents and visitors to West Goshen Township, Sergeant Stewart officially retired today. The men and women of the West Goshen Police Department, along with several members of surrounding police agencies, township employees, friends and family, greeted and honored Sergeant Stewart as he arrived for his last day of work this morning. It was a great event. We had cars parked out front. I know some of you folks had joined us, and it was greatly appreciated. So on behalf of Chief Gleason and the men and women of the West Goshen Police Department, I would like to say thank you to Sergeant Stewart for his dedicated service and loyalty to the township. That is all I have, Madam Chair.
Robin, this is Sean. I have a question for Lieutenant DeMedio.
Yes, sir.
Justin, as you know, I've spoken with the chief and yourself regarding the status of the project for the police body cameras that we had authorized as a capital item for this year, and the replacement of the mobile cameras in the police vehicles. And I believe you have an update that you could share with the board and the residents attending this evening regarding the status of the project.
Yes, sir. So what Mr. Walsh is referring to is we had submitted for our budget for 2020 the implementation of body cams to implement that into our daily activity. So as part of that, our mobile video recorders, or the MVRs as we call them, the cameras in the dashboard of the vehicles, were out of warranty, and we were looking to replace them anyway. So the current vendor we use as WatchGuard Video Systems was offering a 1-to-1 or 1-for-1, excuse me, replacing the mobile video cameras and then getting a body camera to implement with that system. Along with that came, we had to upgrade the server. We're capturing more video. We will be capturing more video, obviously, with the body cameras to go on top of already the mobile video cameras. So there were some incidentals and accessories that we had to budget for that. So we were approved for replacing all the mobile video cameras, which was 14 of them, and then we would then get 14 body cameras. We had applied for a grant through the Pennsylvania Crimes Commission, the PCCD in Harrisburg, to help offset the costs and also allow us to purchase 11 additional body cameras. So each uniform officer would have their own. There's a lot of benefits for each officer having their own, and obviously for if one goes down, we don't want an officer to be out there without it once we implement the policy. So the grant was applied for this past spring. It was submitted in April. The PCCD commission met last week. We did get a response from them to make some additional to add some additional information to the grant. We're still in the process of adding the information, and then we got an email last week saying that we were going to receive funding. It didn't have specifics, but that we were going to receive funding for the grant pending the additional information that they were asking, and then they sent about 6 more forms that we needed to complete. So we're in the process of completing those forms, and hopefully we get the full requested funds from the PCCD.
That's awesome. I think it's really good that we would end up with a project, hopefully that, by the end of September would equip all officers with the body cams and have our new cameras in the vehicles. I think it's really good to have this kind of technology. So it's a tool that provides transparency on what has occurred when interactions between the police and the public occur. And if anything is contentious or disputed, it provides good evidence to support what the outcome is. So thank you for pushing along with the project.
Yeah, thank you.
I'd also like to chime in here, following up Sean's question, and just maybe ask the board to reconsider funding so that all police officers can be equipped with the body cam. Is it right now, is it that people are gonna have to share these body cams? Is that what the status is?
Correct. So if we were consulting with the vendor and some people at the PCCD in Harrisburg, and they recommended that we hold off on the purchase of what we were approved to buy this year until we found out what the funding award would be, just to make it one full purchase. There was a little bit of discounts offered and incentives, if you will, to buy more, as you know, as you can imagine. So we hope to get the full award and have everybody equipped by, like Mr. Walsh said, by the end of September. But to answer your question directly, if we don't get that award and we only get the 14, then yes, then there'll be a sharing situation. Because once we implement it, it'll be mandated for the officers to have the body cams on and working, properly. And we updated our policy. We created a policy, but updated a few of the current mobile video recorder policies, as pertaining to when it turns on, when it turns off, when an officer is allowed to pause it, and so forth. So to answer your question, it'll have to be shared.
Right. And I just had one other question regarding the report for this month. I just to clear things up. When a resident calls in for an ambulance or a fire, does that go through the West Goshen Township dispatch, or does that go through the county?
A fire and ambulance? No, probably 99.9% time people are calling 911. So that's going right to the Department of Emergency Services, 911 Center on West Town Road.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, this is John Hellman. I'd like to ask a couple questions about the report, Lieutenant.
Yes.
You have any insight into why the number of ambulance calls this month was 92, last month was 39? Why was there such a drastic reduction in the prior month, and now we're back to what looks like more of the normal?
The ambulance, I think that, obviously the quick answer is the COVID-19 that we're going through. I mean, there's more people that are home and not out and about. A lot of these ambulance calls are happening at commercial properties. So, we're not seeing as many daytime population. Our daytime population certainly went down during COVID. So I would have to probably attribute that to a lot of the COVID situation.
It seems quite drastic. All right. And also the number of alarms that were called. You mentioned the SPCA as
Yes.
being one that was rather frequent. I think they had they had 5 calls this month and 1 call the month prior. And you mentioned they had new staff on board. But then NV Homes is another one. They had 4 calls last month for April, and now they have another one. Is there an issue that's going on with NV Homes? What's going on with that? Like we talked about last month, I think what's going on with the NV Homes is you have a lot of,
I would say, cooks in the kitchen there. You have a lot of different contractors coming in and out. You have a lot of people in and out that are touching that panel that may not necessarily know the alarm's on and how to use the alarm. And there's a couple different places that are alarmed up there. So I think we're going to see that throughout that project, because there's so many contractors, vendors, and so forth coming in and out of there. And it's just maybe a breakdown of communication on their end.
Yeah, it's kind of like the kid who cries wolf, though. After a while, it gets. Another one is Lasco Metal Products. They had 3 calls in March, 1 in April, and 2 calls in May. Is there an issue with them? These calls, are they false alarms or are they actual alarms? There's an issue there.
I would have to look specifically to Lasco, but we have 55. 10 of them are valid, but most of them were storm related. we mark them as valid because it's storm related with a power outage or so forth, or a window broke as a result of the storm, or weather related. So they become a valid alarm. But no, most of these are, as you can see, they're false.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Lieutenant DiMedio? Okay, then we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the Board of Supervisors announcements. I'm going to go ahead and start. I think I mentioned in our last board meeting or during our workshop that I've been working with the residents who live in Roslyn and who brought themselves to our attention to allow us to help make their situation in working with the overlay related to the university. They have gotten to the point now where they are trying to establish what they're going to fondly call the Roslyn Resident Advisory Group. It's a group that does not require typical public meetings, standard processes, et cetera. It's really a group that can operate to do what they think is the right thing to help bring the voices of the residents of Roslyn to the university so that they can work together to find solutions to problems that have been intractable for many years, and give them an opportunity to also expand the people that they've already talked to us about. We know there's about 20 residents historically that came to that meeting, but they have a goal to try to annex some of the other smaller communities within Roslyn to make sure that those people's voices are also being heard. So I would like to make a request of the board to establish the Roslyn Resident Advisory Group for West Goshen.
Are you putting a motion on the floor?
Yes, I am. I'm making a request of the board. Yeah, so a motion to establish the Roslyn Resident Advisory Group.
Okay, I'll second it.
Thank you. Is this something that requires a vote on public comment? Okay, great. All right, we have a motion and we have a second. Do we have any public comment on the establishment of a resident advisory group for the Roslyn area?
Madam Chair, I
Robin.
don't see any. Madam Chair, Margie has a question.
Okay,
Margie.
who has a
Hi, it's Margie. Hi, good evening. It's Margie Swart. I just have to interject that I hope the West Goshen Resident Budget Oversight Committee is soon to follow. Thank you.
Okay,
Robin, this is Kristen. Can you hear me?
yes.
Is this a group that is a West Goshen? I just want clarification so I'm clear for going forward. Is this a organization that somebody from the Board of Supervisors or staff will be a liaison to? Is this an official sort of agency of West Goshen, or is this simply just a neighborhood association?
No, it's something that I'm planning on performing as the liaison to help steward any communications or issues between the residents and the university. Up until this point, the university and the residents have formed a very strong, respectful, mutual engagement, and they're already making, evaluating ideas and issues that could be brought up, in the near future. And so we're simplifying the structure to a group because we don't know how long it will last, and we don't want to have to burden them with public meetings per se. It's open to anyone who wants to know more about what's going on in Roslyn. No one will be turned away, so to speak, but they need to still go forward with developing their own organizational structure. And it's my understanding that the township will provide them with a dedicated township address so that they can use that address as a way to inform others about the existence of this advisory group, as well as to attract people from other parts of South Campus where they don't know as many of those neighbors as they do that are on the North Campus.
Okay, I was just for purposes of determining whether, their meetings had to be advertised and whether they were, like a sub-agency of the township. That's what I was just asking.
Yeah,
Well,
so just fulfill the expectation in terms of how they can be structured?
Yeah, and whether or not they would be subject to sunshine law requirements and things like that. I think, that's where my questions were leading.
So do we need to do some more homework on that to define that?
No, I mean, I think I would ask that I think it's a great idea, and obviously, I'm not trying to stop this. I just want to make sure that that's clarified, and maybe if there's some sort of mission statement and clarity on whether it is or is not, who constitutes this group, and whether if it's not if it's not a subcommittee or agency, so to speak, of the Board of Supervisors, then it wouldn't be subject to these rules under the right to know laws and sunshine laws and things like that. So we can. I'm not trying to stop you creating it this evening, but it's something that we can maybe follow up and bring clarity to at a future meeting.
Yeah, I think the idea was to at least establish it so they could start communicating through the newsletters that it's being formed. And they, as I said, they don't even have a structure of how they're going to organize other than, a chair, a vice chair, and a recording secretary of any of the discussions that they have. But really, it's a Q&A where people will come up and ask questions and then offer their advice on how problems that they've been watching and dealing with for years can be resolved and addressed to the university, and then worked collaboratively to make sure that outcome takes place. And I'm really just there to help them understand, if they came up with some ideas that I would consider maybe the board needs to be made aware of them before they move forward with them. That's how I would function as the liaison.
I respect
Rob,
the board. I respect.
Robin, if I could,
Okay, go ahead.
as a former resident of Roslyn, I think it's a great idea, first of all. I would suggest that it might be something similar to the North Hill Civic Association and be structured that way as opposed to a direct relation to the township. And I would also further suggest you might want to, explore it a little further with Kristen, with Ms. Camp.
Yeah, so maybe you and I can talk about how that civic association is set up. I think because the township is still a party with the overlay issues, I think we still have to have some involvement acting on behalf of the township when those conversations are happening between the residents directly with and it's up to them. I've told them that they can ask me to be there in those meetings, or if they think that the communications and work together, it doesn't require me there, that's fine for me.
Yeah.
But I would
I'd
love
be
to
glad to help.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think that this is probably more of a civic association structure, as Hugh suggested. I'm not sure that I know enough about it, or I'm comfortable enough to make it an official subcommittee, as it's just, it's one neighborhood. I understand the issues surrounding the Roslyn neighborhood and the PUC overlay district. I don't think that we know everything that would go into making them a subcommittee of the township. I'm not really comfortable with that right now. So I would suggest tabling it till a further meeting until we have more information.
Okay, well,
Robert,
so the only way they can start creating their structure is for them to be actually approved to do so as a group.
Robert, this is Sean. I don't agree with that. I think really it's really along the civic association where they need to organize themselves. And our role is to make sure we have a liaison, and we could nominate yourself and you could participate. But I agree that it shouldn't be an agency that's created from West Goshen. That it's something that we want to encourage. I totally support it. We want to know what issues they have, but we need them to be independent of township structures, in my opinion.
Okay, well, let them know that that's the decision that the board, I guess, is now making. I don't know if we haven't had a vote on it, so I've heard your opinion, Ash's opinion, Hugh's opinion. Do we have an opinion from John?
Yeah, I think we should table it, get some more information, and then we could address this at the next board meeting.
Okay, I'll let them know.
You still have a motion and a second on the floor, though.
Yeah, Robin, would you withdraw the motion?
Well, we decided to table it.
Well, there's still a motion and a second on the floor.
Yeah,
So
we're gonna have to withdraw. Yep. And table
Well,
it.
we have to vote on the motion to table. A motion
No.
to table, a
no,
motion to table to supersede.
No, that's not true.
Just
The
go
maker
by
of the
Robert's rules
motion.
of order. Well, point is, can we table this for now and then have some research and then discuss it at the next meeting?
So I'll need some support from you guys to tell me what exactly you'll need to hear from them. So that we
Robin,
can,
yeah,
a list of what.
Go ahead. I didn't mean to make this more complicated than it is. I just wanted to make sure that we understood. So for example, in the borough of Westchester, there's a lot of different subcommittees that are formed as ad hoc committees of council. And they have defined roles and defined number of members, defined missions that council has delegated to them. It doesn't sound like that's what you're intending. So if that's the case, it's more just that the neighborhood association is going to work together and would want participation by a board member to come to their meeting, I don't think it needs approval to do that. I think they can do it on their own and ask that you participate. And it would more be, you'd be asking your board of supervisors for support to send a liaison to a separate civic association type meeting. So that's what I think I'm hearing you talk about. And I just want that to be clear, because if that's the case, then they would not be considered an agency of board of supervisors, and they would not be subject to having public meetings that have to be advertised under the Sunshine Law. Their records, to the extent that they keep records, they wouldn't have to keep minutes. They wouldn't be subject to public disclosure under right to know. So I just wanted to make sure that, once it was voted on and created, that everybody understood what the legal structure of this entity is. It does sound, although the North Hill Civic Association is actually a created legal entity that owns land, I don't think it's exactly like Hills. I think it's more of a group of citizens that are getting together with a common cause and trying to talk through issues that affect their community. So if you wanted to change the discussion to be for the board to authorize a member of the board to participate in that organization's meetings, I think that's appropriate at this time. If you wanted it to be a subcommittee of the township, not as formal as, say, your planning commission or anything like that, but as a it's almost like your historical commission or another commission that deals with a specific defined purpose that the board sets out, then I think that does need to be tabled so that you can sort through and identify almost like a bylaw type document for what that organization is going to do. I think it's the first one that you're talking about, not so much the second one.
She's muted.
You're on mute.
The disappointment is that they really they really need support. And I don't think the three women who've been driving this initiative for the residents, they wanted to have some level of in connection to the township. So anyway, I will make sure that they're aware of that. Ask them to looking at other ways of forming together this organization. And we'll see if they come back in the next for the next board meeting or workshop, and then they can express where they are in terms of the status now.
Great, wonderful.
I assume you're withdrawing your motion then?
I think I already did, yeah.
All right.
Okay, and do we need to table? Do we need a motion to table, Kristen?
I think with the withdrawal of the motion, it sounds like Hugh withdrew his second. So I think at this point, there is no motion on the floor.
Okay, so we don't have to do anything else?
Correct.
Okay, great. Okay, all right, Board of Supervisors announcements. Can I start with who the person I can see? Ashley, you're first person on my screen.
I have no announcements.
Okay, John, do you have any announcements to make?
Yes, I do. I attended a family-friendly rally, Justice for George Floyd, Justice and Unity protest on Sunday, June the 9th at the West Goshen Community Park. It included speeches by several African-American women and concluded with the walk around the park. And it was attended by maybe about approximately 100 community residents. Next announcement I have is the PSATs, or the Pennsylvania Society of Pennsylvania State Association of Township Supervisors Conference, which was scheduled for April the 13th through the 16th, which was canceled. But what they have done is that they have converted all of their workshops into webinars. And I had signed up for several of those and will continue to do that. So far, I've attended one of them. Was the vendor oversight webinar on June the 11th. And there's another one coming up entitled Environmental Regulatory Primer for June the 25th. And like I said, there's about 60 workshops that have been converted into webinars that are going to be made available over the next 3 months, and I'll be attending as many of those as I can. That concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, who's next? Hugh, you want to go ahead? Do you have any announcements to make?
None. Thank you.
Okay, Sean, do you have anything to announce?
Yeah, I have 3 items. First of all, I will also be attending some of the virtual conferences that John just described. They're pretty good value. I've signed up for one this week, and there are 3 or 4 others that I'll be attending over the next couple of months as well. Second announcement is that Casey has made me aware that the township has an opportunity to apply for a grant for EV vehicle charging stations. This is funded by Volkswagen as a result of their emission violation fines. So Casey and Dave Woodward are working with ChargePoint to get proposals for installation. They're looking at a 2-vehicle charger at the township building, 2 vehicle charging stations for 4 total vehicles at the West Goshen Community Park, and a 2-vehicle charger at Lambert Park. So the submission is required by July the 15th, and if successful, the grant money would pay for 90% of the ChargePoint station purchase and the installation of the systems. So tonight, I really would like to ask for the board to support this application. If we're successful in obtaining funding, then we would have to pay our 10% share of this project, which is not a budgeted item in our 2020 capital budget. But I believe, I don't know if we could come up with a cost estimate for what we believe our share would not exceed, but I'd certainly like us to entertain tonight supporting this application because it's due by July the 15th. And our next board meeting is not until July 21st. So the other thing I'd just like to make a comment to Dave is when we designed the installation of the circuits to feed these charging stations, I would suggest that we make sure that their capacity is sufficient to add on additional charge point stations at some point in the future should we see the demand arise. So we don't want to undersize the circuit and the feeder if we know that at some point in the future it's likely we may have additional charge point stations to install. So,
yeah,
Dave, do you want to comment on that point?
Yeah, no, I agree, Sean. We're also looking wherever we're going to place the chargers that we have room for expansion in the parking lots.
Okay. So,
may I ask?
Go ahead, Hugh.
May I ask a question? The ongoing charges from the electric company. Do you have an idea of what they are?
The charge point stations, Hugh.
The
charge point stations are you pay for use as someone who plugs in. So they're based on a system software that if you hook it up to your vehicle, you have to put in your account information, and the cost of charging goes to the user who's charging. It's really about having the convenience to users at those locations.
So it's like a parking meter, basically.
Exactly.
Thank you.
We need to take a vote on. Is this something you're requesting we take a vote on?
So I need a little bit of help from the board. So what I'm suggesting, I don't know, Casey or Dave, if you could help me with this, but really what I'd like is a motion to support the grant application on the understanding that we believe our share of the capital if we're successful obtaining the grant would not exceed a dollar amount. I don't have a feel for what dollar amount we would put in there tonight, but I would be willing to authorize up to $25,000.
Yeah, we're working with ChargePoint right now to get those costs. We can convey those at the July 1st workshop very briefly. But the grant application is not that extensive. So we can have the grant application done pretty quickly. But we've asked ChargePoint to have those costs to us by before your July 1st meeting.
Great, because I forgot about the July 1st meeting. You're right. That is a meeting that would still allow us to have a number and meet the application deadline. So
Absolutely.
we don't need a motion tonight. We can wait until July the 1st.
July 1st, exactly. Yep.
But can we make the motion tonight?
Well, I'd rather wait, Ashley, until we know the dollar amount, so the board can then feel comfortable that they're authorizing amount that is unbudgeted that we know we would not exceed, versus tonight it would be speculative.
Okay.
Then my third and final item tonight is the Cadmus Consultant Renewable Energy report was available back in January. It was reviewed at the Westchester Area Council of Governments at their February meeting and approved there. The individual participating municipalities in the COG are in the process of having presentations and reviewing resolutions to accept the report and consider what individual actions they will take either in support of the COG or at their own municipality level to further the recommendations in the report. Originally, I was thinking we could use our July 1st workshop for a board and public review of this report and to decide what we were going to then move forward in terms of a resolution for our July 21st meeting. I'm a little concerned about the technology of presenting this detail of information, given the issues we've had with Steve's report tonight. So I'm open to suggestions from the board, whether you want to give it a shot or whether you want to wait until we have an in-public meeting to do the review.
So Sean, if I could just chime in for a second. I remember that I think both John and I joined you guys at the last meeting where you were first discussing the published report. And one of the things that I brought up was that I would like to actually have our Sustainability Advisory Committee that's not formed yet to be a part of the process at some point. And I understand it might be difficult to go through all the motions of forming a Sustainability Advisory Committee and reviewing this Cadmus report. And I'm not suggesting that the SAC needs to be formed before we review that report, but I would like to move forward with this with the understanding that I think that the Sustainability Advisory Committee is still something that the board wants per our last discussion about it. And I've gotten various emails from residents who would want to partake in that. So I would be extremely open to having that be part of the July workshop. But I would also like to request from the board that we begin the motions of creating the Sustainability Advisory Committee sooner than later. So that this would be kind of in sync with each other.
So Sean, I just have, and this is for you too, Casey, with July 1st being a Wednesday of the holiday weekend, I'm a little bit concerned about the low attendance for such a discussion. Similar to how we just pushed the meeting when we had the big storm 2 Wednesdays ago to the next Wednesday. I wonder if we can have a consideration to avoid that week, because I do think it could be problematic for most people to be able to participate if they want to know about it. And it also gives us maybe a little more time to get that notice out maybe in the newsletter that we're going to have a discussion about it, because so many people did show up to those meetings. You know, and it was across many townships, but I do think it'd be beneficial to people like Henry and the folks from the Sierra Club who have put a lot of effort into this to also be able to participate and weigh in.
Yeah, July 8th is the following Saturday, or I'm sorry, following Wednesday. And the holiday is actually observed on the Friday the 3rd. So I think that might be problematic if people are out of town. So if the board's okay, we'll move it to July 8th.
I make a
Fine with
motion
me.
for July 8th. Do we have a second?
Well, yeah, I'll second that, sure.
Okay. Any public comment on moving the meeting from July 1st to July 8th?
I don't
Hearing
see any. You're good.
Pardon?
There aren't any. You're good.
Sorry, Lisa. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, so hearing none, all in favor? Let's do a voice count. I'll go first. Robin says aye. Ashley's next.
Aye.
John? John, can you
Aye.
vote? Did you say aye? Okay.
Yeah,
To
aye.
move the meeting to the 8th. Hugh, are you okay with that? You're on mute if you're trying to talk to us, Hugh. Can you release his mute, Casey? Okay, Sean, what about you? How do you feel about it?
Aye.
Aye, okay, so we have 4.
Hugh's
Maybe-
mic is open.
Okay, so can you get a hold of Hugh? Unmic him? Or should we just do a 4?
Yeah, he's unmuted. He just may be away.
Okay. All right, well, we have 4 to 1 with 1 abstaining at the moment. So let's go ahead and just call the vote. So we can move on to the next important stuff to talk about. Okay. Wait and see if he pops back in. All right, so now number 6, Township Engineer Stormwater Announcements and Woodlands at Greystone Update.
Oh, you missed me, Robin. I'm sorry.
I did?
You did?
Oh.
That's okay.
Township
Just have-
Manager.
That's okay. I
Okay.
just have one announcement. As everyone knows, Chester County has gone into the yellow phase per Governor Wolf's metrics for COVID-19. Reports today and everything we're hearing is Chester County may go green in the next 2 weeks to 3 weeks. So just watch the news and we will post everything we have on the website about what that means to go green. The township building is open to a degree. We are seeing residents and contractors up front in the vestibule. So we're just about back to business as usual. So that's it. Thank you.
Can I just ask you one more question? Are we committed to having our first meeting where we are going to be on the dais in July? Is that correct? It's 50% of the date.
Yeah, if the board is comfortable with, I think it's 20, I think Sean said the 21st of July.
Yeah.
We're going to have kind of a hybrid meeting. We'll discuss it with the board so you're comfortable with what that would look like. We're still, I can't recall exactly what green means for gathering, but I just want to caution the board that if we open it up to the public, that they're actually in the room. I can't then limit because it's a Sunshine Act violation if I kick someone out of the meeting if we exceed our number of people in a room. So we're going to have to come up with a more, maybe a hybrid situation where the board and staff are here and we do it by YouTube stream or something. Or we can do it by GoToMeeting still for the public to participate. So we'll talk about that over coming weeks.
Green allows 250 people in a gathering.
Okay, well, I can't hold 250 people in this room, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're still working on it and you'll just keep us surprised as we go forward. I know that people would like to see, it would be nice to be back together where we can be in person.
Right.
But of course we need to worry about the disease. Okay,
Right.
so that was the last announcement for you? Okay.
Yep, thank you.
I'll move on to, you're welcome, thank you. We'll now move on to the Township Engineers, Stormwater Announcements, and Woodlands at Greystone Update. Mr. Rick Craig.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have no stormwater announcements tonight, but just to give an update on the Woodlands project, the construction on the first of the 3 dams, Dam 181, is continuing. The footing has been poured and the contractor is working on forming up the walls of the dam at the present time. Those are going to be poured in several different stages. It'll probably take another 2 to 3 weeks to get the walls on the dam done. And housing construction continues as it will for quite a number of years yet as well. And that's all I have to report. Thank you.
If I can check in.
Oh, hi, Hugh.
Yeah, sorry about that. I hit the wrong button.
There you go.
I'm
Hugh,
back.
Hugh,
Okay.
this is Casey, if I may. Are you okay with, let's go back to his vote. Just bear with me.
Vote, yes, I'm affirmative.
Okay, for the July 8th meeting. Very good. Thank you very much. Excellent.
Thanks, Hugh.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're moving on to Bill Webb, our zoning officer, for his announcements.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We continue to do a lot of rental inspections. The rental industry is very busy. Departments are very busy. We do have, the zoning hearing board does have one application before us, which will be heard in July. Now that once we go green, the zoning hearing board will be having public hearings again, as well at the township building. We've been holding off. All of the applicants have been so kind to give us a waiver of the requirements of the MPC. The application that we have in front of us is application 2 of 2020, and it is for the Stanberry West Goshen property at 829 Paley Pike. I am going to, Ms. Gerber and Mr. Colagreco are on this call, and I'm actually going to yield to them to explain the applicant's request, because they'll be able to explain it to the board a little more than I would at this time, since they're more familiar with the application. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Gerber or Mr. Colagreco, if that is okay with you, Madam Chair.
Yes, thank you. Please move forward, either Gina or Lou, on this matter.
Robin, this is Sean. Are we moving to the next agenda item? Is this the same as agenda item 9? Or has Bill got more announcements?
Well,
no, my agenda version is showing that the proposed redevelopment of 829 Paley Pike with the grocery store, bank, and restaurant is number 8, coming after the zoning officer's announcements. And the resolution 9-2020 for traffic signals for Market Street and Westtown Road is item number 9.
Well, then we have different packets, because my number 9 is also Gina Gerber and the Stanberry Group.
Yeah, so I talked to Casey about this earlier today, so we're just going to go ahead and have Gina and Lou go forward now.
So Bill, are you finished with your announcements then?
Yeah, the reason I was
move on.
Oh, Jesus.
Sure. The reason I was asking them to interject is because I will need direction from the board, as we do with every zoning application, whether you want to take a position and send Kristen to take a position on the application. Since the hearing is going to be in July, we would need a vote tonight as to whether, or it doesn't necessarily have to be tonight. You could send me emails within the next few weeks to determine whether you want to take a position on this application or not. But beyond that, my last announcement is that a few of the restaurants have taken advantage of the resolution, and it seems to be working well. We did have some issues with one of our commercial providers that's not a restaurant with going ahead and doing things on their own without permits, and it was a struggle, but we finally got through, and they're in operation, running their business in the parking lot of their facility safely, according to our resolution. So I have no further announcements, and I will yield to Ms. Gerber and Mr. Colagreco.
And board members, this is Casey, just for clarification here. These are two not completely separate items. We've got the zoning hearing board issue first, and then we'll move into number 9 for the redevelopment. Because like Bill said, you need to make, you need to have a position or not a position about the zoning hearing board case before you go into the discussion about the subdivision or the land development, I'm sorry. So Gina, Lou, you're up.
I think I'm going to take the lead on this because Lou unfortunately has lost power at his house. He may be participating via phone, but I'll guide you through. And if he happens to pop back on, he will join in. So as you identified, Mr. Webb, this property is 829 Gully Pike. It also includes 106 and 108 Pleasant Drive. These are two residential homes that are existing non-conforming that our client has proposed to purchase as part of this development tract. It's approximately 17 acres total, but when you take into account the various environmental restrictions on the property, we are talking about approximately 5 acres of actual developable land here. I'm going to introduce the variances first. As Casey has identified, we are also here to talk about a related issue for this overall development, but let's identify the variances first. So we have submitted a zoning hearing board application. There are 2 variances requested at this point in time. The first variance is from section 84-22F of the zoning ordinance, which requires a 100-foot setback of a building from Paoli Pike. We are proposing a setback of less than 100 feet. We're approximately 29.8 feet from Paoli Pike. So that is the first variance. And the building that is actually within that distance is the proposed bank pad site on the plan. The other variance that we're requesting is from zoning ordinance section 84-22G, and that's with regard to the side yard setback. There's a question as to whether this variance would even be needed because we're actually improving an existing nonconformity on the property. The ordinance requires a 50-foot side yard setback. The existing building is 5.3 feet, and we are proposing a setback of approximately 31.5. So there may be some discussion with the township as to whether this variance would be needed at all. But again, this variance is with regard to the proposed 4,000 square foot bank pad site. This development is also including an approximately 19,000 square foot Aldi grocery store, as well as a 3,000 square foot restaurant pad site. So that's kind of the overview of what we're requesting here. We were able to kind of design this site to request as few variances as possible, but those are the 2 that unfortunately we are requesting. As you can see, we're doing a pretty good job of complying with the ordinance, but those are the 2 requests we have at this time.
If I can interject, Kristen, you can back me up on this, and maybe Rick or Casey or Derek. I believe in the past we've taken the position that if you are improving on a nonconformity, we would not require a variance.
So to that extent, then we would be able to submit paperwork to withdraw one of the variants with regard to the side yard setback and just pursue the variance for the front yard setback, which is good to hear.
Well, and Bill, I'd like to talk to you a little bit further about that before we 100% conclude that. I did talk to Rick a little bit about this yesterday, and it really depends on the case presented. In a situation where you're removing all of the structures on a property and starting with a vacant piece of ground, basically, and starting fresh with a brand new building or buildings in this case, there's a couple different ways you can go about interpreting that. So I think I'd want to have that conversation. I think I'd rather than proceed with the alternative that they do need that variance. If in the intervening days and weeks between now and the zoning hearing board, we all agree at a staff level that they don't need that, then we can communicate that to the applicant.
Sounds good.
I could concur with that. It's always best to ask for more and let the zoning hearing board say you don't need it.
Are there any questions by the board members? Hearing none, can we move on to the next agenda item?
Robin, I think that they need, what Bill's asking you to do is that in any zoning application, if the board chooses to take a position and send the solicitor to be, opposing the application, that would need authorization. So your options are to remain neutral and not take a position and let the zoning hearing board make its own determination as to whether or not the variances are appropriate. The other option would be to take a position in support of the variances. And that would be that if you feel that, you know, this redevelopment proposal makes a lot of sense for the township and you'd like to see this go forward, then you could actually authorize some sort of correspondence being sent to state the board's position on that. And then a third option is to do nothing and just oppose it, support it, or let the zoning hearing board make its own determination. Those are the three options.
Actually, I do have a question, Robin, if I could ask it of Bill.
Yes, please do.
Or others. So it's interesting to me when we look at one of the other agenda items tonight for the True Mark Bank at 704 East Market Street, that the comments from the Chester County planning group basically had suggested an alternative of bringing the building closer to Market Street, with this idea of what an urban landscape would look like on streets like Market Street and, in this situation, Paoli Pike. So I realize that the plan that's shown in our packet tonight for the development of this property has the bank sitting close to the road, but not within this 100 feet. But I could imagine that when Chester County Planning Group looked at this, they would again suggest that maybe for an urban landscape design, this 100-foot setback is not something that should be, you know, top of mind. So have you any thoughts on that, Bill?
I do not, Sean. I don't have any particular thoughts on that comment.
Okay, then I would say my position on this variance application is neutral.
Sean, do you want to make that a motion for the board that they not send a solicitor and that you remain neutral on this application?
I will make the motion that for the Board of Supervisors to remain neutral on the requested variances for this development.
I'll second.
If I could just have, I'm just struggling a little bit to understand how a 29 or 30-foot setback, when there's a required 100-foot setback, is appropriate. I'm not sure what's like surrounding that. I don't know what that is going to mean for Paoli Pike. I
think what you're asking, Ashley, is there enough room for the sidewalk at 30 feet?
If
I
I
believe
could
we are proposing
provide a little,
sidewalk along the front.
Yeah, Mr. Craig, what were you going to say?
if I could maybe provide a little information regarding that question. I think there are two things coming into play here. One is that due to the environmental constraints on the site, only 5 acres out of 17 can be used. So what that's going to do is that's going to push the development towards the front of the site, because that's the only area that can be accessed readily. The other issue that Sean was mentioning regarding the urban landscape, that is the tendency with an urban landscape to move the buildings closer to the existing street, which tends to reduce impervious coverage, which is beneficial. And it's in keeping with an urban landscape as opposed to a more open plan design like you might find in a rural or residential area. Part of the reason, not speaking for Mr. Khan, but the True Mark site where the Planning Commission, the County Planning Commission made that recommendation, that design was already complete by the time they made the recommendation. So it wasn't really feasible to take that recommendation into account. If that situation had been different and the site hadn't been designed already, that would still have been a feasible thing to do with the bank at True Mark as well. So there's a couple of considerations you might take into account there.
And the other thing I would, I'm sorry.
The other thing I
would mention
Gina, let me jump in. I'm sorry. Ashley, in terms of a zoning variance, the ordinance states what are the rules with respect to the setbacks for this district. And what the applicant's going to have to demonstrate to the zoning hearing board is that there's unique physical characteristics of the property, this particular property, that make development of the property consistent with that 100-foot setback or the 50-foot side yard, they're going to have to demonstrate that there's, topographical reasons, site configuration, floodplain, wetlands, the types of characteristics that Mr. Craig was speaking about that make it virtually impossible to redevelop the site. So that burden is on them. And by the board taking a neutral position, you're not saying that you think the zoning hearing board necessarily should approve it. They still have a legal burden to prove. You're just basically saying, we're not opposed to the redevelopment that you're proposing. And if you can meet your burdens of proof to get a variance, then, that's up to the zoning hearing board to make that determination.
Okay. Okay.
And the other interesting thing about this specific property is with regard to both the side yard and the front yard, there is an existing nonconformity. So with regard to the front yard setback, although the ordinance requires 100 feet, the existing building that's there now is really only 34.5 feet from Paoli Pike. And we are proposing 29.8. So we're talking about a very minor adjustment from the existing condition.
And Gina, can you explain again the existing setback for side yard and what you're proposing again?
For the side yard setback, the existing setback is only 5.3 feet from the property line, and we are proposing a 31.5 foot setback where 50 is required. That's with regard to the side yard.
Okay.
So this is Sean again. So Gina, are you aware of what the urban landscapes Chester County designs look like for urban landscapes with respect to building placement on redevelopment?
I actually have had an opportunity to take a quick look at that when that comment came up for the TrueMark review letter, as you mentioned earlier. And yeah, we have a general idea of what that looks like for the county comp plan.
So have you given that any consideration, or is this pretty much a final positioning of the buildings from your perspective in terms of a design?
I think the client would be happy to look at it in terms of coming up with a final land development plan. At this point, we're pursuing this plan based on what we think is best for this particular property, but we'd be happy to take a look at it.
The reason for my question is I wonder if given more consideration of, I'll say, flexibility around these potential setbacks, whether we could minimize some of the encroachment more on this wetlands buffer area so that it would be an even bigger win from an environmental impact for this site if we were to consider, a different orientation or placement of buildings that would be consistent with urban landscapes, but would be obviously in variance with our ordinances.
So what we would be discussing essentially is going to be a larger variance from the setback requirement, because essentially we would be encroaching closer even to Paoli Pike.
Yes, as long as it offset the impact to the total buffer area that you have shown on one of these drawings. If that was minimized, then maybe the zoning hearing board and ultimately the board of supervisors might view that as a benefit overall to what's happening here.
The only problem with that, Sean, is that one of the elements of a variance is that the applicant has to demonstrate that they're asking for the minimum relief necessary, and they really wouldn't be asking for that. I understand the policy consideration you're making, and it seems to me that if that's a majority of the board feels the same way you do, the more appropriate step then would be to amend the ordinance, because you're putting them at odds with what one of their burdens is under proving of a variance.
Well, I would support amending the ordinance. I agree with Ron.
Yeah, it's a problem is we've got an ordinance that's probably not been looked at for a long time with respect to this whole comprehensive plan that we've developed relative to the kind of development we see along Paoli Pike, consistent with urban landscapes from a county level. And there's now forcing these kind of issues that we're still getting non-conformances, and yet we're also still creating other impacts because of the fact that it's limiting how the development might occur within the developable parcel on this particular site, at least. I don't have a solution tonight. I'm just explaining the problem. Maybe the zoning hearing board can consider it. And I do have a motion out there that the Board of Supervisors take a neutral position at this point for this design to go forward to the zoning hearing board.
I'll second that motion.
Hugh, we already had a second from Robin.
Oh, did you?
Yep.
Okay, I apologize.
Okay.
I thought he was looking for a second.
No worries. Okay. We're gonna move forward with public comment.
Madam Chair, Margie has a question.
Okay, Margie, go ahead.
I'm just wondering if the applicant would consider just removing the bank site so the Aldi building could move forward. I mean, it just seems like we have so many banks. Do you already have a tenant for that building?
The issue that we've raised previously is, like I said, this is a 17-acre site that, because of the environmental constraints, has been reduced down to only approximately 5 developable acres. And in order to make the development viable, the 3 uses that we've proposed on the site need to be there. So in order to proceed forward with development of what is essentially a very difficult site, these 3 uses need to be there in order to make it, financially viable.
Could that bank end up being a different use? Say, a marijuana uses can go into bank buildings. I mean, is there any chance that that could be something other than a bank if and when it gets approved?
Well, there's 2 constraints. First of all, it would have to be a use that's permitted in this particular district. And the second item would have to be that the parking would work with what we have on site, in addition to a number of other concerns.
Thank you.
Well, I just want to say at the last planning commission meeting, there was some discussion about this proposal, but it was only in consideration of whether or not the commission members would be interested in or would go along with the idea of an exchange of an encroachment into the riparian buffer for getting some additional acreage on the north side of this property. And the feeling of the commission members that they would be agreeable to do that. But that's as far as the discussion went. But there was a lot of questions raised about the amount of traffic that this would generate and the funky merger that's just further west of this proposed project going into the borough, where you actually cross over Westchester Pike into Paoli Pike, and how this would generate even more traffic along that corridor. There were some questions raised about that. I just want to let everybody be aware that that discussion was held.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Sorry to interrupt, Robin.
That's okay. So let's go ahead and do a voice vote. I'm going to start with Sean.
Aye.
You?
Aye.
Ashley?
Aye. And I'd also like to just say that I think that having the discussion about sidewalks is a great idea.
John?
Aye.
Okay. Robin, aye. Got it, Casey? Okay. Okay, we're going to move forward. Oh, by the way, thank you, Gina, for sharing this information with us this evening.
Robin, I had one question if I could ask. This is Tina Smith.
Hi, Tina. Sure.
Hi. I was just wondering what some of the environmental issues are on the property. Gina, maybe you can speak to that.
Sure, we're going to be getting into it a little bit more later on when this item comes up again. But Goose Creek does run through part of this property. There are some wetland buffers that we need to be aware of, and there's also some other riparian buffer areas that we need to be aware of. So, you know, those particular items, in addition to the buffers associated with them, is what kind of restricts the areas of development on this property.
Okay, so it's not necessarily contaminated, environmentally contaminated, just
No.
environmental issues that preclude you from doing certain things. Okay.
Right. These are naturally occurring features on the site that make it difficult to develop certain areas.
Okay, I thought you said there was environmental contamination. Okay.
No, environmental features. Sorry if I missed.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you for your comment, Tina. Okay, we're going to move on to what I believe is item number 10. Am I back in sync now? Which is the discussion and possible approval of final land development plan for 143,000 square foot self-storage and 47,427 square feet of flexible space buildings for Goshen Leisure Development Corporation at 21 Haggerty Boulevard. Nope, that's wrong. That's still wrong. We're still on the wrong number. All right, well, it's sorry.
Number 9.
Yeah, you skipped over. We have to have the full discussion about 829 Daily Place.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
What's in my packet is the right label, but it's not in the right order. That's my problem. Okay. So yes, a discussion and possible approval of resolution 9-2020 traffic signals for Market Street and Westtown Road. No? Still not the right one?
Yeah, we need to go back and talk about the supermarket with Gina and Lou, or Gina, I guess. We have to have the full discussion about the project.
Oh, it's a separate part of the development, another conversation? Sorry about that.
Correct. It's okay.
So as we've already introduced the site, we have 17 acres here. We're talking about the development of an Aldi grocery store, a 3,000 restaurant pad site, 3,000 square foot restaurant pad site, and a 4,000 square foot bank site. We are trying to make this development work on this particular site because from what I understand, it's been a long road with this particular property. The Spellman building has been vacant for quite a while. There have been a number of developers who have tried to develop this site. I think what we have here is a very viable option. However, in order to proceed forward and to make this development work, what we're proposing is a slight encroachment into a wetland riparian buffer. And what we're proposing is an encroachment of approximately 1/4 acre. This is going to be to the rear of where the Aldi grocery store is located on the site. Casey, I don't know if you have the plans that you're able to share. It will help to orient it a little bit and provide a good, okay, so while you do that, I'll introduce what we're talking about. So as I said, approximately a 1/4 acre encroachment into the riparian wetland buffer for purposes of the building, the grading, and as well as a retaining wall. This would be in the form of a waiver that we would request during land development. We're vetting it now because it's a very important waiver that if we aren't able to garner support for during the land development process, we would have a hard time developing this property in general, regardless of what we're developing it with. However, we're mindful of the fact that this is, something that we're asking of the township. So in exchange, what we are proposing is to deed restrict more than twice that amount of square footage on the site in an area of this site, which is developable. So we're talking about what we're proposing is 1/2 acre of land. On the very top of your screen here, you'll see a green area. That's the area that is developable that we are proposing to restrict and not develop in exchange for or to offset the waiver that we're showing here. And if you look at your screen, you'll see it shown in kind of like a yellow orangish color. Those are the areas in which we would be encroaching into the wetland buffer area. So we are here this evening. As Mr. Hellman said earlier, we did go before the Planning Commission with this as well. Generally very favorable and for what we're proposing here. But before we move forward with any further development plans, this is just a sketch plan at this point. We're kind of testing the temperature to see, what the board's position is on this proposal.
So Robin, I have some questions. Shall I go first?
That's fine. Yep.
So Gina, could you explain to me why the orange areas are needed for the development? As I briefly look at this, I've only looked at it in a cursory manner, other than where the oldie building footprint overlaps into the orange area, the other parts of it, can you explain why that is going to be impacted as part of the development? And then I have a follow-on question after you've answered that.
Sure. We actually have our client on with us this evening as well as Rob, our engineer. So I'm going to defer to them and have them give you a little bit of a better idea of obviously the Aldi building, but there are other areas that are impacted. So Mark or Rob, would you be able to speak specifically to that question?
Sure, it's Mark Potchmet with Stanberry Development. I can jump in here, and I could ask Rick if you could maybe zoom in on the area adjacent to the Aldi, because what you'll see is just a slight portion of the Aldi building encroaching, in addition to a little bit of a retaining wall. The rest of the orange is all going to be grading that is going to be green basically when we're done. So it'll be pervious surface. There's only a slight portion of the loading dock area of the Aldi building that will be impervious.
Okay, so what exists now and what will be different when you finish this grading and grassing after you've completed the work?
Rob, you can correct
trees today?
Wrong, but I think you can see the squiggly line where the trees are.
Yeah, I can jump in. This is Robert Fruit. I'm with Dynamic Engineering. I'm the engineer and land planner helping with this. So as Mark described, the area that's behind the Aldi building, there is the edge of some of the treed area within the buffer that would be cleared for ultimately for grading though and return to green, and could also be landscaped. Everything to the on the plan to the right of the back of the Aldi building, that's an unusual shaped area. That's within the existing lawn area. We don't intend to clear any trees in that buffer area. It's existing lawn behind the parking lot for the Spellman building. The purpose for the encroachment there is for grading to accommodate the above ground stormwater management basin. So that also will be green space that will have some minor grading and then be returned to green space.
Okay, thank you for the answer. And then my second question is, the proposed wetland buffer relief area in green on the, whatever that would be, the north side of the property, is there other developable land to the east and west of that green area, or is it the only piece of developable land on that side of the property? What's determining its shape, in other words?
That half acre is upland area outside of buffers. We had other exhibits, but this exhibit shows the compensation area, if you will. To the east and west and south of that is buffer area associated with the Goose Creek.
So is there any other area of this property that isn't shown either as part of the new development or in the green here that is considered developable land in the future?
No, that's it. And that was what we discussed in the beginning, that there's only about 5 acres of this entire property that's developable, and that's fronting on Paley Pike. I think the only exception to that, and I don't want to jump ahead, Gina, would be the area in the far northeast that's adjacent to the material storage yard.
So there is an area that is currently being utilized by the township for a maintenance storage area that at this point, the documents of record seem to indicate that there may be a little bit of confusion regarding the title in that particular area. It's currently being used by the township. But there we go. You can see it in red, pink on your screen there. right now, this is owned by the Westchester Area School District, but the developer and equitable owner is proposing to be able to step in and clear up the title on that as part of this development. And if there is any sort of deed correction or deed transfer needed in order to make sure that the township is in rightful possession of that property that they're currently using, we're willing to do that as part of this development as well. Something else to consider, something else that this developer is willing to take care of as part of this.
Okay, great. And then just one last question from me. So as part of, if this encroachment was to occur, does it have to be grass as the final state, or could it be some other landscaping that would be amenable to further improve the environmental performance post-development?
You're talking about the area in yellow, the encroachment area?
Yes, yeah. If that was to, instead of just grass, if it was to be some other form of landscaping, shrubs, grasses, you know, something that could be other than just a cleared area, is that feasible or not? Would you be amenable to that?
It's certainly something we can look into. There's not a whole lot to see back there, to be honest, since it's pretty large swath of land. There isn't a whole lot of people looking back there to see what was going on, but we would certainly, you know, be amenable to looking into that.
Yeah, my reason for my question is downstream, Goose Creek, as it flows downstream here, it creates a hell of a mess at Montgomery Drive, I think it is.
Yeah.
Where the creek gets, the culvert there is woefully undersized when we have storm conditions. Anything that can be done to improve drainage and pervious surface along there as we go upstream would be beneficial, in my opinion.
Yeah, I will say that this site currently has zero storm detention, and we will be implementing, you know, the best practices storm management system that Dynamic is proposing.
Very good. No other questions, Robin?
Well, I'd like to ask a couple of questions. The area that's to the north of the proposed restaurant, is that developable land that's below the orange area?
That is, so that's upland outside buffer area. Yes, that is area that right now is proposed for our stormwater management basin.
Well, has there been any consideration of flopping the Aldi with that restaurant location? This way there will not have to be any proposed encroachment upon the riparian buffer?
Well, we looked at this development a number of ways, and in one form or another, we need to deal with stormwater management. As Mark indicated, there's nothing there now. We're going to provide a compliant full measure of stormwater, including our above ground basin. So in some form, the encroachment is necessary, whether it's for the area behind the Aldi for grading or the area reserved for the stormwater management basin. In some form or another, the development is, again, constrained as far as possible towards Paoli Pike, but we need to utilize some of that area to manage the stormwater.
The next question I have is to the north of the proposed waiver relief area, is there any possibility of a development coming in from the north side into that particular parcel?
Yes, so that immediately beyond our north property line is some industrial facilities that are on Lincoln Avenue.
Yeah.
So that is in that area. I think it's also important to know that the green area that we're proposing to preserve is right now, I would say, more valuable wooded as far as providing buffer and environmental value as far as filtration and for stormwater. So preserving that wooded area, again, in my opinion, it provides a greater value than, you know, the green area on our site that would be reutilized.
All right, thank you.
And I just have a couple comments as one of the other board members. To me, looking at this, so there's a reason that this property is difficult, right? you have the Goose Creek, you have all these environmental constraints. I understand that you guys are trying to work around those, and I appreciate you approaching us with these plans. I think that you guys put a lot of work into trying to minimize those environmental encroachments, and I appreciate that. But we have a community here that we are trying to keep as pristine as we possibly can. And we care about our the people that live here and the people who pay taxes here. And we already have a number of stormwater issues that we are dealing with here. And it concerns me to see another building encroach upon one of the few environmental places that we have left in this township. And I don't necessarily see your promising to not develop the northern part of this parcel as an effective bargaining chip to allow for someone to encroach on a wetland. To me, as a board member, that doesn't, fine, you won't develop it, but we're still losing a part of our wetland system. So I'd like to see if there can be any improvements made. I understand that you guys want to repair that area with some grass. I think that Sean brought up a really great point. It's not about what people see when they look back there. It's about how it can actually improve our stormwater management. It's a very technical issue, and that needs to be addressed. It's not a visual thing. We have a lot of these issues that we're trying to deal with right now. And so, that's my perspective. I'd like to see if there's any improvements that can be made in that area, in that respect.
I think you bring up a good point, and I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page here. We are not taking away any wetlands. What we're encroaching into is a buffer area. We don't believe there's any magic in the amount of buffer setback that the township's ordinance has set with regard to this particular property. We're not anticipating any negative stormwater consequences because of this particular encroachment. And as was mentioned earlier, this site doesn't have any stormwater on it at all right now, even though it's already developed. So what we're proposing is to introduce stormwater management facilities to the site that are actually going to improve the existing property with this particular development.
Yeah, Gina, I was just to reiterate again, the amount that we are looking to trade is roughly twice the amount of our encroachment that will be replaced with something green. Happy to look at alternatives there. And as Rob had said, I do believe the additional buffer is more valuable on the industrial side than it is on this development, which will be brought up to local standards with regards to storm drainage.
Okay, so do we
Any other comments from any additional board members? Any more comments before we move on?
Can I give you a little history on the building? The Spellman building used to be the Paoli Pike School, as everybody knows. And in fact, when West Goshen in 1965 joined the jointure of the Westchester Area School District, they had their own elementary school. West Goshen had its own school board and elementary school, and that was our school. Just nickel knowledge. And the building's about 100 years old, I think. Bye.
Thank you, Hugh, for that historical lesson. I always like hearing those stories that you know about that we don't. Okay,
yes,
so
if I can add one thing, my wife Sheila spent her first year in teaching after she graduated from college. She spent her first year teaching there.
all right, well, are there any other comments from the board in terms of any more questions of Gina? Do we have any more comments from Rick about this property?
So this is Sean again, Robin. I have one other point since I realize now all the engineers for the development are on the line. So, one of the things that's important to many of our board members and the residents is about preparing not only, doing the best we can when it comes to stormwater management, but is preparing for a renewable energy future. And although we don't have any mandates in our ordinances or anything, we do like to promote our developers to consider what they can do with new buildings when it comes to making them ready for renewable energy. So whether that's installing from day one or designing roofs for solar panels and bringing those considerations early on into the design would be really appreciated. Again, I realize we don't have any requirements for this, but this is the way the future should be built. And I strongly encourage you when you're doing the detailed design work to think about how to make this site ready for a renewable energy future with whatever that you can do to make that happen. Thank you.
And I also want to add to that, also incorporate EV charging stations as well.
I support both of those comments, and I think that I'd be a lot more receptive to the encroachment if those implementations would be made.
For sure.
Can I just, Robin, can I interject for 1 second? I don't think, and Gina, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, we're not to the stage where you're actually voting on a waiver. I think the applicant is just trying to get a sense from the board whether when they come to you, assuming they have their variance relief and they have land development plans before you, whether at that point in time, you would look favorably upon these waivers. Gina, is that an accurate summary of what you're looking for right now?
That's correct, Kristen. We were really just trying to get a sneak preview of the board's position on this particular issue because it's going to be very important for this particular development and could very well dictate whether or not this project moves forward.
So it sounds like you've received a lot of good comments tonight, some other things to think about as you go forward with this development, but there would not be a need for any vote by the board. I just want to make that clear.
Yes.
Okay, so is it now a good time to thank Gina for coming tonight? Okay, Gina. Thank you for participating tonight and telling us about your property and some of the issues that we need to address as we go forward.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, before I move on to the next item, could someone please inform me of the exact item I'm now going to speak on?
Robin, can I just ask a question relative to the last topic? This is Tina Smith. I guess,
is Gina still here?
This was for the engineers. Are they still there?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe. Let's go and give it a try.
Okay. And the engineers there, or if Gina's still there. Does anybody know if an ASTM phase 1 or 2.1 was done on the property yet? Or any core sampling? Or if the building has any underground storage tanks? I guess they're all gone.
I'll be honest, I don't know for sure. I can't speak to that. I don't know that for sure. I know that this use was as a educational building. So whether, I know there was nothing necessarily inherently contaminant about what was going on this property, but as far as whether a phase 1 has been done, I would imagine so as part of the due diligence, but I don't want to speak to that completely affirmatively.
I was wondering if phase 1 and phase 2 have been done in addition, because sometimes the fuel oil tanks for heating the building could be underground storage tanks. So
yeah, I understand your question. Unfortunately, I don't have a firm answer for you on that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, should we move on to the next agenda item?
Yep, and Robin, we're on to the traffic signals for Market Street and West Town Road.
Yes, okay. So item number 9, discussion and possible approval of resolution 9-2020 for the traffic signals for Market Street and West Town Road. And I think Mr. Lavonda is going to walk us through this.
Yeah, this was a request by Westchester Borough. They received a nice grant to re-establish their previously existing closed loop traffic system, which I think connected maybe 20 traffic signals by fiber optic cable, probably 2 decades ago. Over the years, the fiber optic cable has gotten damaged and the closed loop system does not work anymore. So they received a grant to connect all those signals again by wireless devices like they use in today, modern technology. For some reason, well, not for some reason, but rightfully so, one of our signals was included in their closed loop system due to its proximity to the rest of the system. So since we own the signal, traffic planning and design requested that the board approve a resolution number 9 to update the signal diagram essentially for the signal. There is no cost to the township. It's just our time tonight for the board to approve this, and I'm recommending approval.
I move that we approve it.
Okay, I'll second.
Okay, public comment? And Casey, can you drop this wetland buffer screen right
Rick's
now? Okay,
Rick's
thanks.
doing it right now. Yep.
Okay, thanks. Okay, public comment
Oh,
on the application for the traffic signal approval.
Madam Chair, can you give me a minute? I can't see the whole screen. Give
let me
one
just
sec.
stop sharing the Rick.
I don't see anyone.
Yeah, you need to stop sharing the screen so that I don't know who's
Okay,
sharing.
so nobody, you can't see anybody, or there's nobody who's interested in public comment, correct? We haven't heard from
I don't
anybody.
see anybody who's interested.
Okay, all right then.
I don't
So
see anyone who is.
any other comments by township supervisors? Okay, hearing none. All in favor, I'll do a voice count. I'm going to start with Sean,
Aye.
Hugh,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Ashley,
Aye.
Robin, aye. So Casey, when will this this update take place?
To my knowledge, we were contacted, of course, during COVID. So I'm not, Kristen, you may know, has the board acted on their own traffic signal
Yeah,
resolutions yet?
the borough has approved it. I think there, as with any project with PennDOT and grant funding, there's, some delay, but yes,
Right.
the borough has approved it.
Right. So with projects of this size, I mean, there's 20 signals. It's not a lot of work, but PennDOT's process, we'll call it that, is rather lengthy. So since we did this one tonight, I'd say it should be done within 6 to 8 months.
And Robin, I'll get clarification tomorrow from the borough and let everybody know.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so the next item is the final land development plan. That's on my list is number 10. So what is it on your list?
Number 11, it's Haggerty Boulevard.
Yep, 11. Okay. All right, so this is the final, let's see here. Sorry about this. Just the 140 Haggerty Boulevard. Yeah, okay. So discussion and possible approval of the final land development plan for 143,000 square feet of self-storage and 47,427 square feet of flexible space buildings for Goshen Leisure Development Corporation at 21 Haggerty Boulevard. Mr. Craig to walk us through this.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This project, as you can see on the screen, is a rather large building project. It's on the current site of a golf driving range. It's to the east of 202 and to the north of Matlack Street, with access on the east side of the property off of Haggerty Boulevard. There are a number of storage buildings shown on the left-hand side of the screen on the drawing, and then flex buildings on the right-hand side. There are riparian buffer and stream issues here, and this project has been redesigned to eliminate any encroachments on either the stream buffer area or the floodplain area. including the stormwater facilities. They're all outside of the buffer encroachment or buffer areas. There is full stormwater management provided for this site. And over to the east, right of the match line, is an outdoor storage area that's not shown on this screen. The project has been reviewed and also reviewed by the Township Planning Commission and has been recommended for approval by the Board of Supervisors.
I have a comment, if I may, Robin.
Yes, please do.
That's the former site of the Westchester landfill. There may be, and I don't know that the developer knows this, but there may be a contamination problem since that was an active landfill.
That has actually been addressed by the developer. There was a geotechnical study done which shows the limits of the landfill and the depth of the material, as well as what's going to be put on top of that, and also any additional soil compaction requirements that will be needed for stability of the buildings on top of those areas. So that has been addressed.
Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments from board members?
Yeah, I just want to follow up with what Rick has already started talk about. There was a Chester County Planning Commission wrote its review, and there were several items that they brought up that were questioned and addressed at the last Planning Commission meeting and had already been dealt with by Rick and by the engineers. So all the issues that were raised by the Chester County Planning Commission have been addressed and resolved.
Great, thank you for letting us know that.
So this is the site of the driving range, is that right? And the miniature golf course right there?
Yes.
And are they selling that property? Is that, or is it sold already, or what's the?
Property is owned by Mr. Freeze. The ownership is not changing, just the use.
Okay.
Hey, Rick, this is Sean. Do you know what the intended use of these flex buildings is? Is it office space? Is it light industrial work inside? Could be either one, depending on what tenants they get?
Maybe Mr. Freeze could address that, but flex building space by its nature could be any of the above.
Yeah, and if I may, this is Adam Brower, the project engineer. The plan you're looking at on the screen, there's 3 larger buildings to the right, flex space. They're also probably going to be more focused on being RV storage. We do have the outdoor area. However, as Mr. Freeze has done his research, he understands there's a demand for your more expensive RVs to have internal storage. So these are actually glorified garages, if you will, for people to be able to store their RVs under roof.
Okay, next question for me is, and it was highlighted in the Chester County Planning Commission comments, and you've said they've been addressed, but could you explain to me, Rick, how access for emergency services is managed? Because this looks awfully tight between buildings in terms of fire truck access or some other emergency response vehicles to get in around these storage areas. Does it meet the requirements?
Yes, it does. The fire marshal has reviewed the plan and approved the plan, and there is adequate, I don't have a way to point to it really with a pointer, but there is access around the buildings and through this loop to the left-hand side where the cursor is shown, which will facilitate access by fire department vehicles. You're right, certain areas here where the more dense buildings are is going to be very tight. But the fire department vehicles can access the perimeter and access those buildings from those areas.
Okay, next question. Help me understand stormwater management. Is it improved overall? Is it neutral? Is the amount of impervious surface from the buildings taking away from what is essentially a field today going to be better managed through having the basin and the retention there? Give me a kind of feel for what's happening stormwater wise.
Well, there obviously is more impervious surface with this development than currently exists. However, there is quite a bit of existing impervious on the right-hand side of the site already. The driving range is obviously grass, but the other thing is there is basically no stormwater management on the site now. The prior development was prior to most of the stormwater requirements. So the level of stormwater management that will be done for this development is significantly greater, and I believe will result in an overall improvement on the stormwater management on the site compared to what it is now.
Okay, and similar to my general comment I made before on the last development, these kind of buildings are ideal for designing from the start to consideration of solar panels, future solar panels. It's a renewable energy future, and it would be great to, if the property owner and the design could consider what they can do to improve that situation in our township as they progress with the details of designing this site. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? So are we making a decision tonight to adopt this?
Yes.
Okay, so do we have a motion yet?
I'm sorry, adopt what? The construction of this? Like,
It's to approve a land development plan, to approve the final land development plans as presented.
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Public comment?
Madam Chair, give me a sec.
Do you have one person, caller 8? Oh, okay.
No.
Okay. So we do not have any public comment, correct? Okay, hearing none.
Correct.
All in favor, we'll do a voice count. I'll start with Ashley.
aye.
John?
Aye.
You?
Abstain.
Sean?
Aye.
Robin is aye.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Hugh, do you have a reason for your abstention?
I'm leery of the, as Sean pointed out, the limited access to some of the buildings.
Okay,
And
I would
also
suggest
the
you just, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And also the site itself.
Okay, I'm giving you advice. I would just suggest you vote no. You have to have a direct financial interest in the project to abstain.
Do you? Then I'll vote no.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to change my no as well. Thank you.
Okay, so we have 3 ayes and 2 noes.
Correct.
Okay. All right, moving on now
If I may
to,
real quick, thank you very much on behalf of the applicant.
oh, thank you. Yes, and I see that they're still hanging on. You're the owners. Thank you for staying. I know this is a long meeting, so thank you for being here to listen in on us. Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, so let's make sure I got this right. This is item number 12, the final land development at 704 East Market Street. Mr. Craig will also lead this discussion.
Okay, this is a final land development plan for Truemark Financial Institution at the corner of Bolmar and Market Street. Market Street is at the top of the screen. Bolmar is to the left of the screen. The existing site has 2 buildings on it, both of which are non-conforming. The site has been used for either auto storage or auto sales for a long time. That use is no longer applicable. So the applicant is proposing to demolish those buildings, consolidate the 2 sites into one, and construct this bank facility. The site will have 2-way access from both Market Street and Bolmar Street, as well as the parking lot, which the applicant also owns in the southeast corner of the site. There will be a drive-through with 2 lanes. And the existing site has no stormwater management whatsoever, but there are stormwater management improvements for this site. They are somewhat slight, but they are an improvement over what is there now. There is some grass, and there are also some underground detention facilities. The site also has sidewalks as required by the Board of Supervisors on both Bolmar Street and Market Street. And the site has been reviewed, or the project has been reviewed by the Township Planning Commission and the County Planning Commission, and has been recommended for approval by the Township Planning Commission to the Board of Supervisors. And I believe we have both the engineer and the developer, Mr. Khan, with us this evening, if there are any further questions.
I'd like to move for approval.
I'll second.
I have a question, Robin. Robin's okay to go ahead?
I'm sorry, I was on mute still. Okay, go ahead.
Rick, on the page 3 of the site plan that we have in our packet from the County of Chester. So I'm just seeing, yeah, it's the only one I have in front of me tonight. It shows 1 way in off Bolmar Street. You're saying that's 2-way?
That was changed. The original design was for 1 way in, and we required the applicant to change that, which they did.
Remember that.
Correct.
Okay.
It's on the next page.
Well, the one other question I have is there was a comment from the County Planning Commission that small area that's hashed could be made a green area. Is that part of what the final design is or not? It's shown as number 5 on their alternative sketch. Does that exist, and is it green or is it paved?
If it's the lower right-hand corner, it's green, but
okay,
I don't have that in front of me, so I can't necessarily answer that.
Actually, it looks like it sits on the other property.
Well, then
excuse me, this is
not relevant to this land development.
Rick, this is Eli. I just want to let you know that is not paved or not green. It is just a hashed existing paved area, and it is on the neighboring property.
Okay, thank you. No other questions.
I would also like to just tell everyone, especially you, Mr. Walsh, that we do have a letter from DeGenova Associates, a structural engineer, detailing that the wood trusses used to construct this building will be sized to accommodate solar panels.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
That's great news.
Thank you so much.
Okay, do we have, let's see, we have a motion and a second? And we have no public comment, or do we have anyone with public comment?
I'm looking, give me 1 sec.
Thank you.
No.
Okay, so hearing none, we'll go ahead and do a voice call. I'm going to start with Sean,
Aye.
Hugh,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Ashley,
Aye.
and Robin, aye.
Thank you very much, folks. Have a nice
Thank you.
evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you. Okay. So now we're going to discuss with the possible approval of the final land development plan for the 2,400 square foot building addition for David and Cynthia Springer at 307 West Town Road. Who will be speaking on their behalf?
Yeah, I'll get this started. I believe we also have the engineer here as well. This plan is a holdover from the COVID issue. It was reviewed by the Planning Commission in March, but it never got to the Board of Supervisors because that meeting wasn't held. So this has been sitting around for about 3 months. This is a small land development project off of West Town Road. West Town Road is situated to the left-hand side of the plan or to the west. Most of these facilities already exist. This property was the subject of a small subdivision last year where area was added to the right-hand side of the plan from the cemetery. That area is shown in a little bit darker line on your plan, and it is pretty much mostly parking. There is a small building addition proposed, again, towards the lower right-hand side of a 2,400 square foot building addition to the existing commercial building. So basically, this is a small building addition with a little bit of added parking and enhanced stormwater management. And it's adjacent to a cemetery. Project has been reviewed by the Planning Commission and has been recommended for approval.
I'll move to approve.
Are there any questions from the board?
I'll second it. I have a question for Rick. On the Citrus County Planning Commission review, on the primary issues they mentioned about the number of parking spaces in the current development plan. What was the upside of that? I don't recall that discussion at the Planning Commission, but they suggested that if the extra spaces could be landscaped and held in reserve instead of being paved over. What was the final resolution of that?
All right, that's a standard county planning commission comment. And if we were talking about, an excess of 50 or 100 spaces, that might not be a bad idea. The excess spaces here are very small in number. The developer, the owner feels that the spaces are necessary. And since there is no parking alternative anywhere near here but the parking lot, I would suggest that it would be prudent to let the developer have the spaces that he thinks he needs to have adequate parking, even though it slightly exceeds our code requirement.
Hi. Now, Aldi's grocery store and a bank is going in there, and this one, I don't know what this one is.
West Town Road on the left.
Yeah, I'm not sure what they're doing there.
Can you just show me, Rick, on what you're presenting? Can you just take the mouse and show me? I'm sorry, I'm just not understanding exactly where they're planning to put this.
Yeah, you can see the little magnifying glass there. This is the building addition here, and the parking area is here.
Can you tell me what businesses are next to that little addition, if you don't mind?
I have no idea. I don't know if the engineer could speak to that or not.
There's a children's school in the front of it.
Is this
Yeah,
where
the Children's Academy is up here, but I don't know what's in the commercial building.
Is this where the dance schools are by any chance?
Yes. There
Yeah,
is a
so
dance.
that's actually, this is actually my backyard. Literally my backyard. So I have a little bit of concern because I can see this and my neighbors and I can see this from our house. So I have some concern. Yeah.
Well, there's a cemetery adjacent to this property.
Yep.
And it is a commercial district, and these are allowable uses in the commercial district.
I get that. It's just hard to support it. All right. I don't support this, but it's fine.
Take a vote. Do we have any other comments from board members? Okay, hearing none. Do we have any comments from any residents or people in the audience currently?
Madam Chair, I don't see any.
Okay. All right, let's go ahead. Did I start I didn't start the vote, did I? Had I
No.
started with anybody? Okay, sorry, thank you. I'll go ahead and start with Sean.
Aye.
Hugh,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Ashley,
No.
Robin, aye. All right, thank you, Mr. Craig, for the presentation. Moving on to item number 14. Is a discussion and possible approval of ordinance number 2-2020 related to small wireless facilities.
Thank you. Do you want me to take over?
Yes, please do, Ms. Camp.
Okay, so this is an ordinance that my colleague Kim Benzie has had conversations with the board at a presentation on at a prior meeting, as well as your planning commission. And it's really as a result of federal laws and state laws that establish different standards for what are called small wireless facilities. And these are small cellular facilities that are they're located within your township rights of way. They are defined by the federal law. They need to be 50 feet or shorter. And rather than have them be contained within your zoning code, our suggestion is that you pull it out and have your own ordinance, a separate chapter of the West Goshen Code that establishes the specific standards and the permitting requirements for these types of facilities to be located within your township rights of way. So because this is a ordinance to be part of the West Goshen Code, we had to advertise this as a public hearing. We advertised tonight's ordinance for public hearing in the Daily Local News on June 2nd. We also sent a copy of the ordinance for inspection to both the law library and to the Daily Local. And happy to answer any questions. I think people need to understand that the federal and state laws are favorable for these types of facilities. And it's unlike zoning, which really deals with uses on private property. This is dealing with almost like utility structures located within township rights of way.
Robin, this is John. I'd like to ask you a couple questions.
Yes, please do.
This proposed ordinance was considered at the Planning Commission meeting on February 11th and recommended to accept it with two caveats. Number one, that the installation comply with NFPA 70, which is the National Electrical Code, particularly in regard to grounding requirements, because the concern was raised that we didn't want to have anything being constructed that could potentially become an electrocution hazard to anybody in our community. And I think that was complied with this version in 67-13. It does make that reference. And the second thing was that there'd be more examples and a variety of the aesthetic look of these small wireless facilities be made available to potential suppliers who would want to install these. And I think that was done in 67-9B, which I believe we have to develop a small wireless facility design guideline, which would be the next step. Is this correct, Kristen, if we adopt this ordinance?
Yeah, I think that at your prior meeting, you did already adopt the
Yeah.
resolution adopting the design guidelines.
Yeah, we did that last time, John. That's what we approved at the previous time this was reviewed by the board.
All right, so we have that in place then. All right, so now, adding this chapter 67, will this then make chapter 84-4 definitions and 84-57, the other sections of our township code, obsolete?
No, they won't. There are still provisions in chapter 84 is your zoning code, and there are still provisions in your zoning code that regulate cellular towers on private property. I did speak with Kim this evening before I left my office, and she does advise that there are a few tweaks that need to be made to your zoning ordinance to recognize the fact that this was adopted. So we'll put that on our to-do list as we have other zoning amendments that come forward.
Okay. And then will these small wireless facilities, will they be by right or by conditional use?
I think they are by right.
And you'll clarify that?
Yeah, they would be by right within certain public rights of way.
Okay. And finally, my last question is, how will this ordinance be enforced? Would Bill Webb be involved in inspecting these facilities once they're installed, and to make sure that they are complying with the National Electrical Code? Will there be an enforcement provision?
These types of facilities would be handled by probably Bill as well as Rick and your building code department. I know that was one of the conversations that Kim had with Rick as to what type of application would be needed. And so I think it would be a collaborative effort by all three of those departments.
John, just if I may, John Beswick reviews these for building code compliance under the commercial code.
And they would also require a road occupancy permit. So there are actually 2 permits that will be necessary for each of these installations: a road occupancy permit to be in the right of way and a building permit to construct the facility.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so Kristen, are we moving forward with accepting the ordinance, or just getting ready to put it out for advertisement, and we have to have a hearing on this?
This is the hearing. We did advertise this for tonight. At your last meeting, you authorized us to move forward with the hearing. So if the board's comfortable with the ordinance, somebody can make a motion to adopt the ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, any public comment? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and have our voice vote. So I'll start with John.
Aye.
Ashley?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Hugh? Hugh? Okay, Robin, aye. So we have 4 votes aye, and we'll wait and see what happens with Hugh returning.
I'm here.
Oh, good. Okay, what do you vote?
Somebody,
Aye or nay?
aye, 3 times.
Oh, very good. All right, thank you. All right,
Didn't know
then.
you had an 8-man board.
All right, we're going to move on to item number 15, the summer 2020 family summer camp. Ken Lair and Tom Steins will speak about, I guess, this new opportunity.
Thank you. At the May Board of Supervisors meeting, the decision was made to cancel summer camps, but with the idea that we can revisit at the end of June if conditions permit, to offer some sort of abbreviated alternate offering. Tom Steins and I met with, electronically, met with a couple of our most senior head counselors to try to come up with an idea for a program. We had two main concerns. One was social distancing. Kids, just by their nature, are going to gravitate towards each other and making social distancing difficult. And the other is common contact with equipment. So what we are looking at is instead of offering a children's camp, providing a family camp. That would be end of the day. It would be 1 hour per day. The children could thus interact with members of their family, whom they are already exposed, while keeping distant from other participants in the camp.
I think it's a neat idea. Given the fact that we're now in the yellow phase, and I guess that's 25 people or something that are allowed to gather. And I'm seeing here that registration would be limited to 20 participants per session.
That is correct. It would be 20 participants per session, which would mean about, assuming an average of about 3 per family, 6 families per session. So we'd be looking at something relatively small. If we filled all 3 sessions, it would be 18 families.
If it's the popular choice, if people want to participate in that, I think that it's a good idea, rather than outright canceling. If we can offer something that's within the guidelines, then I would support it.
Hey, Ken, do you have any feel for what demand you might get for this kind of a program? Do you have folks asking you about a family program like this?
Not per se. So we would be taking a bit of a shot in the dark. Tom Steins and I have been getting requests from families about offering some sort of camp since camp was canceled, but not this specifically. So as I said, there would be some shot in the dark, but I figured that given the limitation that we would have 18 families maximum anyway, and if we had to, we could cut it down to 2 sessions or even 1 session, it would be worth taking a shot on.
If we do go to green status here in Chester County, but by early July, say, would you consider increasing the number of participants?
I will be honest. We were basing this on Code Yellow. If the guidelines do allow us to, I know that in Code Yellow, the maximum number of participants would be 25. If Code Green has a higher allowance, then yes, we would be able to increase the number of participants.
What would be the process for determining whether it was worthwhile to do? So in other words, would you advertise this and see what kind of interest you got and then decide whether we should go ahead with it based on the demand, or would you do it regardless of whether you only had 3 or 4 families sign up? How would that work?
Yeah, if we had 3 or 4 families signed up, I could see us doing 1 session instead of 3 sessions. In terms of advertising, we would use the electronic resources at our disposal: website, e-letters, Facebook, etc. And then we would just simply set up a 2-week registration period at the beginning of July, probably with 1 weekday evening registration period for those who would find that more convenient.
Do you have a feel for the cost versus revenue of this? Would it pay for itself, or is it going to be a cost to the township?
At what I have outlined, it would be a cost to the township. The fee that I indicated of $200 per family or $300 for a family of 4 to 8 would cover the cost of bringing in the counselors. It would not cover the cost of the art instructor, fitness instructor, or supplies. If we did want to include that, then it would be $300 per family or $400 per family of 5 to 8.
But based on the overall expectation of the number of participants, it's not going to be a big impact on the cost side.
It would certainly be well within what was budgeted for Summer Rec Township. It would be well under that.
Yeah, thanks. No other questions.
Yeah, Ken, do you find from prior experience that there's a continuity from year to year of families participating in the summer camp activities with West Goshen?
Yes, Tom Steins would be able to address that better than I, since he handles the registrations.
Might that be a specific source for you to reach out to see if there would be any interest for this?
Absolutely.
My own feeling is people are looking to get out, and I can see it in my own neighborhood here. People are in family groupings are sitting out there on the front lawn, and they're within the neighborhood. There might be 3 or 4 families getting together on somebody's lawn and just keeping an eye on the kids as they're playing. I think an activity like this would be something that we could do as a township, and I think given if there is that need, I think it would be a good thing for us to do.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have to applaud you, Ken and Tom, for being so creative and continuing to find ways to help summer camp actually happen this summer. So I really like the way you've looked at this to include the parents, which means they're more responsible than the staff have to be, and can be monitoring their kids the way they feel most comfortable in doing so and bringing them. So thanks for that update. Do we need to make any decisions about that? Or are we going to continue to sort of watch things as they unfold? I think Sean's right. We need to get a sense of how many families would actually participate so that you can get the right number of people to help be those counselors. With just 1 hour in the afternoon, I don't know how many people would be motivated to do that, but I think most parents would love to get their kids outside and be able to enjoy them. Because that's what being with your family is anyway to begin with. So keep moving forward and keep us posted.
And one side note, I did forward all this information to the Park and Recreation Board. They, unfortunately, due to the scheduling, don't meet until tomorrow evening. I have gotten a couple of Park and Rec Board members email me with positive response. In all honesty, we do have one Park and Rec Board member who doesn't want to see any programming in 2020 out of an excess of caution. If you wish, you can tentatively approve it based on what the Park and Recreation Board says tomorrow.
Well, let me get a question. What are you looking for us for tonight? Are you looking for us to approve this to start on January the 15th, as you have outlined in your description here of the summer camp? What are you looking for?
That is up to you. Typically, a formal approval isn't necessarily needed for the programming, but I know at last month there were concerns about the COVID-19, and so did want to certainly bring it to your attention what we're looking at. And if you want to, you can formally approve it, or you can just say, no, we're good with it without the formal approval.
So Ken, when do you expect that you would start requesting or putting it out there through the newsletter or however you provide the information? When do you think you start that process?
We could start with the electronic advertising by the end of this week. It would be very easy to set up the page on the website and then to link to it via emails, via Facebook, etc.
Well, so the way you've already provided the overview of how this would work, I would support you in doing it, but would want to obviously have the caveat that if we were to see that things in Chester County, there was a spike towards the end of the summer, hopefully the warm weather and the humidity are going to keep those droplets from getting in people's noses and mouths, just dropping to the ground. But I think it's worthwhile given the research you've already done and what you think might come from it. So
and just to assure you, Code Red would be an automatic shutdown. I did not indicate that in the proposal, but given how the township has reacted to things, we have been following consistently Pennsylvania guidelines and CDC guidelines. So yeah, Code Red would be a shutdown.
Yeah, and I feel more comfortable with parents being involved in this as opposed to just having counselors, because then we have a potential concern on either side of that equation getting sick. So I appreciate your revamping of it. All right, so I made a motion. Does anybody want to second it? Or do we just want to table it and wait for another time to discuss it again?
Well, since you made the motion, I think we should give the support of the board to move forward with it. And that way you can work with the Parks Board tomorrow. So if we're going to have a motion, which you've made, Robin, then I'll second it.
Yeah.
Okay, any public comment on this topic? All right, hearing
Madam
none.
Chair, there is not.
Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead with the voice vote. I will go first is aye. Ashley?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
John?
And just to clarify, this is to support Ken's proposal here, correct? To move forward?
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, all right.
And Hugh?
Aye.
Okay, so the ayes have it 5-0. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for your presentation, both of you. All right, we still have the minutes to be approved, the treasurer's report to be approved. And I would like to also bring up the request that I made to table item number 15, which is the discussion about Dr. White's memorial request. That is based upon an initiative that I started back in 19 or end of 2018 related to developing a policy when we have family members, people who have been significant in supporting or being participants in the township. And when we had an issue a couple years ago, we had decided that we needed to draft a policy to how we would handle it, similar to how we're trying to plan if we were going to have a furlough, the impact of those decisions so that they could be consistent across the board. So I'm requesting that we table this for now because I have spoken to Dr. White and he was comfortable with the how I laid this out. We need to know more about what's been done historically as a board. We need to understand better what options are available for the board to decide what type of recognition that his father should continue to receive. And in our conversation, we learned that there were things that he felt were decisions made by prior board members that were not relevant to what they felt should happen for their dad's recognition. So I'm putting it out there. If there needs to be a vote on it, we can have a vote. If there is an acceptance that we can have this conversation once we have a chance to meet it with Derek and have Derek do some research for us, then he could provide us sort of a, make decisions from that information. Hugh, did you want to say something?
No, I'm sorry. I was talking to my secretary.
Oh, okay. All right. So I think we should move forward with the things that we have to approve each month, which is the treasurer's report. So can we go ahead and have that in first? Treasury report from May 2020.
Make a motion, we approve it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion, and I have a question for Casey.
Okay, you want to ask that question now?
Yeah, Casey, this is relation to the payment made to AccuFact, Richard Kuperwitz. I just wanted to ask if you knew the status of his reporting on the additional information that Sunoco had provided to him on the pipeline.
Yes, Mr. Kuperwitz, according to Mr. Bruman, did receive all of the information except one item that they're still working on. And it's been delayed because of the COVID situation. But I've asked Mr. Bruman to get at least a partial update for us from Mr. Kuperwitz before a final report's issued, because I'm not sure how long that's going to take to do, because I think Mr. Kuperwitz was marooned in California under quarantine for weeks and weeks and weeks and was not able to get home to work. So it's been delayed a little bit. So I should have an update by the end of the week for the board on that report.
Great, thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Do we have any public comment on the treasurer's report for May of 2020?
Madam Chair, Margie has a question.
Yes, Margie, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. On page 11, there were a number of payments totaling just over $9,000 to highway materials for, it looks like roughly 200 tons of asphalt. Just wondering, is that for the annual paving project?
No, that has nothing to do with our paving contract. Dave, any idea what that's for? Was that the riprap?
No, that's just normal patching with the road crew.
There you go. So just normal road patching material.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Are there any other public comments? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and do the vote. Sean, you can start.
Aye.
Hugh?
Aye.
Ashley?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Robin, aye. Okay, the next item I think we should cover is the minutes. We have two sets of minutes. One is from the February 18th, 2020 Board of Supervisors meeting. The other is the March 4th, 2020 Board of Supervisors special meeting, where we talked about the overlay ordinance discussion. Do I have a motion to adopt these minutes?
I make a motion to adopt.
Yeah, we have to do it by month, so you'll have to make a motion for February.
I was about to say, I make a motion to approve the February 18 minutes.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, any public comment on the February 18th minutes?
Margie, do you have a question on this one?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
I had
great.
sent an email to the board. I had sent an email to the board requesting an amendment. Just curious of the status of that.
Margie, is this for the February meeting minutes or the March meeting minutes?
I think it was the February. So I had questioned the $512,000 to restricted parks, and I just think that's important to be in the minutes because that was not in the budget for 2019 or 2020.
Well, this was the deposit from the Luxor development. Is that correct, if I remember?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. Well, Hugh, would you want to amend your motion to include the addition of Margie's question and the response on that?
Yeah, if it's correct, sure, we can amend that motion to include it.
Then I'll second that amended motion.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other public comments on the minutes for February 18th, 2020? Okay, there are none. All right, hearing none. Sorry, getting tired. Sean, go ahead. We'll start with you on your vote. Sean.
Sorry. Aye.
Okay, Hugh.
Aye.
Ashley.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Robin, aye. Okay, the next set of minutes are the March 4th, 2020 minute.
Make a motion to approve the March 4th meeting minutes, please.
Okay,
I'll
thank
second.
you. All right, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any public comment on the March 4th minutes?
Madam Chair, we do not.
Okay, hearing none, let's start the voice vote. I'll vote first. Robin, aye. John?
Aye.
Ashley?
Aye.
Hugh?
Aye.
And Sean?
Aye.
Okay, very good. We've gotten through the two main issues that we need to address before we can adjourn, so that's good news. Are there any additional requests for public comment other than what we've on the agenda?
Madam Chair, Margie has a question.
Yes,
Okay, Margie.
thank you very much. I had some comments and questions regarding the audit, and I won't go through all of them. I just want to point out one thing that I request that you take a look at. On page 11 of the audit that was posted on the website, there are some fields that could be populated to provide a little bit more transparency. Specifically, the very top line under legislative governing body, it seems that that figure is not the correct figure, because I believe that's for salaries. So there's a line item for the executive, which would be the manager, but that field is not populated. So
yeah,
I would just hope that you would take a look at that and see if we could be more detailed on that page.
Yes, and since we weren't able to actually have a full report verbally from our auditor, we're going to try to find a way to maybe have him come back and speak again so that some of these questions can be answered, because I don't think we got through much of his statement before he started to freeze. So we can follow up with him as well to address that in particular, as well as.
I've compared our audit to some other neighboring municipalities. So for instance, that legislative or the governing body, obviously your salaries are minimal. So that line is usually just filled with whatever it is, like $40,000 or $57,000. And then there's usually always a breakdown for whatever the township manager is making. And I just think that should be populated correctly in our audit as well.
Okay. Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Anything else related to the audit? Margie, is that it?
No, I have more, but I'll save it for later.
Okay. We'll be back here, on the 8th and the 21st next month. All right, so
okay.
At this point.
Robin, Margie, you say you've got more for the auditor, for Steve Kutsaflakis, or you got more questions related to other business here?
Well, actually, if you have a few minutes, they're probably pretty quick here.
Well, if they're audit related, I'd rather wait till we have Steve on, because your comments are about this year, the 2019 audit. So, the board has not really overall reviewed that information with him. So I think it'd be better to do it when he's available.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, that basically is everything on the agenda, but for the discussion of Dr. White's memorial. So do I have I'd like to have just everyone tell us whether or not you want to have a conversation about that now.
No.
I mean, right now or in the future? Yes, I'd like to have a conversation in the future.
Okay.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Sure.
Question mark?
Do we have a second to adjourn?
So this is Sean. I'll second Hugh's motion, and I also prefer that we discuss memorials at a future date.
Yeah, but I think we need to have that discussion, and once we get some research done on that, and we can come up with a way to move forward.
Okay, great. All right, well, we have a motion and we have a second. All in favor of adjourning? All together, folks. Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Long meeting. Well done. Thanks for hanging in there, Justin. You have to go to work tomorrow morning at 6:30 a.m.?
You too, Woody.
Yeah, where's Woody? I saw he was here, but he looked like he dropped off recently. And Lisa, thank you so much for doing traffic tonight again. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa.
You're welcome.
Keep us organized. All right, good night, everybody.